Peace.
Secret House.
Secret House against album reviews. It's us again. If you're looking for Spade, he's on sabbatical right now in the States. He'll be back soon, I think, in a few months. Shout out to brother DJ L Spade, guy on the left. A little different today, just me and Jet. But yeah, we're back, and we're going to talk about an album from some artists that we have never reviewed before. We're talking about Phiik and Lungs, also known as Lonesword, which is his production moniker. This is called Another Planet 4. It is 17 songs, about 45 minutes long. Phiik and Lungs are both MCs from New York.
Yep.
Very New York sound on this album, I would say. And Lungs does his production under the pseudonym Lonesword.
Yes.
So yeah, it's them too. And because we've never talked about these artists on the show before, let's talk about how familiar we are with them and how we know them and their music and such. What do you got, Jet?
They were both on the Fatboy Sharif that came out like 3 months ago, and that was my first time with either of them. I am familiar with Lungs by name, but yeah, never listened to a project by either of these guys.
Okay.
They're both on Preaching in Havana, but yeah.
Okay. You know, I've heard about them for years, but I know I've listened to an album. I probably listened to one of the Another Planet joints a few years ago, but the time that I really looked and said, all right, let me try to pay attention a little bit more to them was the Top Shelf Premium freestyle that they did. I heard it and I was like, wow, this is so like graffiti to me. Like, this is so New York to me and interesting that I should listen to them more, and I just never got to it. So I would probably say that this is really my first proper introduction to the type of art and type of music that they're making. And yeah, shit, let's go ahead and get into it since we both kind of fairly new up on their art. Well, what do you should we do album?
Let's
overall
talk about the album
first?
as a whole. Yeah.
All
yeah.
right.
One, there's a lot of tracks on there. Two, they're all so dense and they're all similar enough thematically that I don't know if we need to individually break down each track.
Sure. There's a lot of words. Let's talk about their styles.
I would like to give this episode a subtitle. This is the Secret House Phiik and Lungs review : How I Wish My Brother Spade Was Here.
Okay. Okay.
Not
I don't know if I'll fit that into the title, but yeah.
No, you don't have to actually put it in the title, but not because I would have agreed with Spade on this at all, but I'm sure he would have had many opinions on this record.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I've never really listened to an album like this before. I've listened to albums that this is clearly influenced by. I've listened to albums that, you know, evoke this kind of sound. But I don't know if I've ever listened to like a 45-minute long ambient record with two guys just going double time, full
Like
tilt,
hyper wordy,
hyper wordy, non-stop from start to finish. I don't know if I've ever experienced anything like this before.
That's a good. I mean, so many of these, like we were saying before we recorded, like evoke certain styles. Like, to me, this is very. You know, when hip hop, when East Coast hip hop went, you know, further left than Lyricist Lounge and Sound Bombing. This is kind of the trajectory of the kids who were like the original backpackers, like not Lupe Fiasco type backpackers that were like subtly touching the mainstream, but were on some Little Brother, bring it back to real hip hop type of shit.
Sure.
These are the cats that were rocking backpacks with spray paint in it, trees, maybe a fucking, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
You might have a heat. You might have a gun in there or some shit, like what I was doing. Like, we were goons, but we were outside. We were writing graffiti. We were rapping weird. And this is very much like that to me. So it's not strange, but they're also in that tradition, just like Sketch 185, very unique stylistically while having a more like a similar aesthetic approach.
Right.
And the two MCs, like, they sound like vocally, it's like similar vocal tones.
Yes.
They sound very similar, but they're doing two different things. So they're not like twins. You know what I mean? It's a little bit different. And I personally, what it reminds me of is kind of Mobb Deep.
Okay. Yeah.
Mobb Deep, because it's too, and I feel that way about a lot of the art on the album too. It's like, it reminds me of Mobb Deep because you got the MCs, the MC and the MC producer combo, like, you know, Prodigy and Havoc.
Yep.
And it is unmistakably New York to me. Like, there's this, like, if I heard 20 seconds of it, I'd be like, those fools are from New York.
Yes.
And it's very, it is underground, but there's things that they're doing here that are not like the.
It's very
different.
Four Elements.
Yeah.
For something that
That's a good way.
barely has beats on it. You know, obviously, Lonesword is very, very intentional with his choice of beats here, but these are some of the most minimal beats I've heard on any album. You know, a lot of these
are non-beats.
Non-beats.
Yeah. It's not even like sample loop where there's a drum in the background that's kind of just part of that sample that's very muted.
Right.
It's like,
it's just a sound.
It sounds like one of those like 1930s radio shows, like The Shadow Knows, you know, like a lot of them are very cinematic like that. A lot of them evoke a kind of like noir sound, like goon noir.
Goon noir. I like that.
Noir.
I like that.
And to me, it's very dope, but there's also like, it's a difficult listen for a lot of people who just, number one, there are cadences, but it almost feels more like a semantic, rambling Gatling gun approach where it's just like, and I'm thinking a lot of things, and here's a lot of things that I'm thinking, and now I'm feeling like, you know, I'm thinking a little bit, you know, and it's just like, okay, and it's also not like super poetic device punchlines and things like that.
But every now and then, like a bar just like hits you. It's like, I'd been watching this morning. I was watching some UFC fights from the last few years, and I watched Usman versus Masvidal 2. Okay, and it was that right hand from God out of nowhere that every now and then just hits you, where like a bar comes in, you're like, yo. And I'm not really like a lyrics or a lyricism guy. Certainly not in the way that you are. You know, I'm not a rapper myself. I don't rap. I've never really rapped. I'll kick freestyles with friends, but, you know, I've never put any recorded rapping out. I've made tons of beats, but, and, you know, I have that literature background, but for the most part, I've always been more concerned with how lyrics sound as opposed to what is directly being said in them. And you can't listen to this album in that way, because it would just be like mush. You wouldn't be able to perceive anything, right? Because it is just this constant like machine gun fire of words being hit.
I mean, and it's so like, lyrical is not the word I'm looking for. It's so verbose.
Yes.
It's so verbose that in order to like really grasp anything from it, you have to listen with the intent of listening. You can't, this is not a like put it on in the background and kind of, you know, like fucking wash the dishes or like vacuum the floor, because it just doesn't work very well as music in that regard. But man, to be quite honest with you, I can see why a lot of people would listen to this and be like, is this even fucking rap? But to me, this is, like you said, this is b-boy shit to me.
Purest
and I don't mean that in the sense like, oh, I listen to it, I want to fucking hit 2000s and windmills and shit. I mean, like, when I was a b-boy in the late 90s, early 2000s, I was really on my b-boy shit. We were listening to joints like this. Like we were like looking for the cats who had styles, the cats who would, you know, it's interesting, it's different, it's them, it's uniquely them. We weren't dressing the same. We had things that were similar, like codes and you know, gear, but we were always trying to be original. And this album is wildly original.
It is
for that I love it.
It is like a polar opposite to like a Prefuse 73 or something.
Sure,
you know, where you have the very musical and lush and beautiful kind of beat-oriented production. You have this complete opposite end, which at the same time bears this kind of similarity, where it's just a lyricism, or not even lyricism, just lyrics at a very, very high rate, where the production serves to, you know, elevate the lyrics in the same way that a vocal sample on a Sam I Am beat might do.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I would say probably my favorite tracks on this album are the ones where the beats are a little more material.
Okay.
Like She Could.
She Could might be my favorite one on the album.
That's definitely a choice for me. Saudi Arabian Air Force Ones.
Because you use like the iTunes joint or Apple Music, right? Is there like 2 minutes of silence on that Air Force Saudi Arabia Air Force Ones?
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know if that was just like them fucking up on
With the
upload. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like maybe there was something at the end and it just fucking rendered it with 2 minutes of silence. But yeah, it's just 2 minutes of silence.
Also, like if you were going to just stick a breather, a period of complete silence at some point in the album, it probably would be about 2/3 of the way into the record, which just happens to be the end of that track. And it feels like maybe they really wanted you to just like stop and take stock of everything that's happened before they launch back into it again.
Yeah, there's also a few, like, I think that I think the cohesion of the album is actually really, really good. There are moments that it's like, there'll be something that's a little bit more abrasive, and then they'll bring it back, and it'll be something that's just like a simple loop that shouldn't be there, but it's something kind of to accent other parts of the album. Like that song, what did you just say? Fucking
She Could.
It's different because it's like it has like this hand, like bongo, like a hand drum. I'm looking for my notes.
The album actually
hand drum loop. It sounds more grounded and earthy than a lot of the other tracks.
I don't know where the sample is pulled from, but actually the album does kind of remind me of like an Indian raga. Like
there's lots of kind of those
moments. This kind of motion, this perpetual motion kind of taking place where it's not specifically the notes being hit, but so how they accumulate together into something larger than the sum of their parts.
A lot of these beats, they sound very much like 404 beats. The effects processors that they use, you go to any like beat show and you hear the fucking, you know what I mean, a variety of the delays and the pitches and just so many of the different, flangers on some of these beats. But they also, I just got to think that they are creating an atmosphere, like this weird dystopian atmosphere, more than they are just throwing shit at the wall and see if it sticks. Like even the kind of arrangement of the album works really well together for me. That breathing moment that like you get 6 tracks of variety of different type of sounds up into To Hell with Babe Ruth. Like that Death Weapon track number 5, it's just like a simple horn loop with this cacophony of like 1950s tractor beam sci-fi sounds, right? And it's like, it sounds like goon noir shit, right? It sounds very strange. And then it gets to the Akai solo joint and it's just him. Like they're not on that track. It's just like, here's a moment to breathe. We know that we're fucking hitting you with that semantic rambling Gatling gun again. But here's a moment to breathe. And then after that, we get She Could. You know what I mean? It's well sequenced, and it's so unbelievably strange that I am just not. This is not music that I would recommend to the typical hip hop head that I know. I recommend it to connoisseurs of like the avant-garde and art and people that appreciate the experiment, not just for the experiment, but like a well-crafted potion, like a well-crafted elixir, because this shit is unusually dope.
This album really got me thinking about my friend, the Scottish experimental musician Helena Sell, which wrestling pun, hey. She
that is hard.
Makes these kinds of like I don't know if she would approve of me referring to it as musique concrète, but like she always refers to it as free music and spells it music with a K to distinguish it from the broader kind of cultural idea of what music is supposed to represent. She recently put out an album, I believe, just called Not Music, and there is this kind of collagical element to this where it's not really what one would consider musical, but at the same time it gathers so much musicality as a concept, and that's where this kind of raga came in for me. Is like, it's meditative in a way. It's very easy to just like let the lyrics just wash over you, But you do need to dedicate your attention to it. I don't think this is something that just kind of you could like put on while you're at the gym or like, you know, washing dishes.
I feel kind of like, you know, we've talked about how many lyrics they have, and we haven't done much of like a dive into some of the things that they're saying. Like,
I didn't take any notes. Hit me up.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just like, I don't want to call it braggadocio because of the connotation that has within hip hop, but some of this shit is just like like strange, abnormal, like observational tracks. But they also kick a lot of shit. Like on Don Quixote's, like if I ever have kids, I'm a love them for exactly who they are. Like Dwayne Wade. Like the shit is not mindless at all. Like even when they're just going off on like dope shit, like. My pen shipped machete. I shipped the Chevy Reckless. Sick heavy, another planet on my necklace. They're just dope things. Everything starts to click when you see them dots connecting, drop past the deception, except for when Ricky Casso decide to show the weapon. Ricky Casso is the fucking acid king. Right. He's that guy who took a bunch of acid, did satanic experiments, killed that kid out in the upper New York forest. I think A$AP Rock made a track about that on the Tobacco collaboration album. There are a variety of things and thoughts and witty, you know, just banter from a lot of these tracks that I really appreciate. Our guy Fatboy Sharif is on here too as a collaborator, and that song Rat Pack is very strange. It reminds me of like, I don't know what it is, but soon as Fatboy Sharif starts rapping, I start to get nervous like I'm watching a Racerhead again. He gives me that feeling like, whoa, this fool is like on some, like it's black magic, but with magic with a K. You know what I mean? Like it's interesting, man. Like this album has got some fucking looks. Yeah, this album has got some looks. Let me see if I got any other. I've got some lyrics here that I won't repeat because I won't do them justice. But look, can I play like a little beat? Like, can we jump around a little bit and just kind of talk about them a little bit, because I think it's worth it. There's some, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of a taste. Like, hold on, let me play Don Quixote, okay? I'll start that. I got like 3 or 4 that I want to play. Like
Yankee Doodle.
Yeah. But yeah. This is kind of what you get on a lot of the album.
Yo, 1 2 1 2, what the fuck is good, man? Yo, L, the oil tycoon, poisoned by retired maid, confidential operation, codename Silent Spade. If I ever have kids, I'ma love them for exactly who they is, like Dwayne Wade. Rappers behind all bills, talking shit online, the same stinky Jays. The shit I list smell like haze. A lot of these cats should probably try to sober up like White Claw Gabe.
See, you know what I mean? Like that beat is like some, like, it feels black and white. It feels colorful environment, but it's something kind of sinister and it feels very New York to me. I don't know why, but like when I was listening to it, I was like, this shit is just Mobb Deep to me. Like I was born in New York, but I am not a New Yorker. I'm through and through Cali, grew up like that my whole life, not in big cities, I've been in Tokyo for 10 years, but this shit I was like, damn, like it gives me a side of New York that feels very real and very lived in, but also different than the experience that other people have. This is Mobb Deep to me.
Yeah, I mean, it almost evokes that ambience of a big city, like, you know, the trains passing by, like the traffic, people talking.
It is like, some of it feels like from the perspective of the side alley behind the garbage dumpster, kind of looking out at kind of the gross shit. Like this song, Death Weapon, like looks into that horn. It sounds like like a radio show type of.
At 2 a.m,
like
our masked villains emerge from the dark alley, having completed their evil deeds.
He's like, yeah, get over here, baby. Yeah. It feels like some Sin City type of black and white, like in the shadows, like and like when you listen to it, it's like that horn loop just going over and over again, but also in the background you just have this kind of very full like
slap through the breeze to ease on with telephones and clones, trying to tone down the Monday blues. Tell them gray losing reception, new assets for balance. Walking on water, your town slaughtered within a millisecond without putting the house in Joe.
Yeah, it is. If you can't handle like something like that, then this album probably won't stick for you too much. Yeah. But I think like she could like. Yeah, this is one of the tracks that is probably most conventional.
Conventional, yeah.
And it's still not.
but it's got drums.
Yeah.
And they're rapping to the drums.
Right. And one thing that I noticed too is that like it's easy to just like I've described it as like semantic rambling, gatling, da 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 da. But there are different flows on this album. At least their approach to kind of the speed and the type of texture they're trying
This
to.
isn't rapping fast for the sake
Yeah.
of rapping fast. There's
Yeah.
plenty of rappers who have done that in history, and some of them were really dope at it. That's their style. But I didn't really think like speed wasn't the first thing to come to my head when listening to this.
Yeah. It's interesting the way that their vocals and kind of the ideas that they're emitting kind of have an interplay with some of these very simple beats. If you listen to the last track, Worse Off Than Drugs, it feels like the loop is speeding up because how rapid fire they're going, but then it's kind of I'm not even it might be speeding up. The BPM might go up just a little bit. That might be something that they're intentionally doing, but yeah, I fucking like these guys. But listen to the way that this beat, like, it's just kind of like, it sounds like these guys definitely love Stroke of Death off of Supreme Clientele the most, like that really like.
And it also sounds like somebody who has like a Chaos Pad or an SP404 who's just kind of occasionally leaning over and turning a dial and then pressing another button.
Hey, a lot of these cats really worse off the drug addicts. Terminal flash red busted on corrupt status. Track John Madden in video game to start dabbing.
It feels like fucking impending doom. I like this shit. Like this type of music really speaks to me because it's kind of like, I imagine these fools were like growing up listening to the same type of shit that I was. Maybe a couple years younger, but man, like this reminds me of like Nephilim modulation systems. This reminds me a lot of like, if you're a fan of let me just get my recommendations off since I'm doing it. If you're a fan of like Oracle Elohim and the weird approach that he does a lot, Nephilim modulation systems, which is him and Big Just. If you're a fan of that type of shit, I would definitely recommend this music to you. There is something that just is interesting. These people, they probably really like Bazooka Tooth and shit. Like I'm all for this. It's very strange. What kind of Rex you got?
If you like Saul Williams, this doesn't really sound like Saul Williams, but you see where I'm coming from with this? Like,
okay.
It's very like lyrically dense. There's quite a lot going on. Very referential. A lot of it went over my head, I'll admit. But it's like a fun puzzle to decipher as well.
Yeah, and also there's that callous disregard for the rules that I kind of love about this. This shit is very punk.
It's punk.
I mean, it's very hip hop in a sense of that ideological aspect about hip hop, but very punk in that sense too. It's just like, fuck whatever you think. Here goes our art, and if you don't like it, then fuck you. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
and also people who are into doom but would never refer to themselves as blurs.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Where it's
Word.
like you like doom for the you're like into the Special Herbs series and you're into the more kind of sonic elements of doom as opposed to the aesthetic elements of doom.
Shout out to my man Baye McNeil. Peace of the OG Baye McNeil. He's liking doom for different reasons than the white kids with doom tattoos on the subreddit.
Word.
Like, you know what I mean? He likes it for that like pro-black, fuck you, here goes some real styles and originality. I do what I want, but because I'm an actual human being, humor, misogyny, all these things are going to come across in my music. And I fuck with this. I don't listen to this shit like it's supposed to be academic. I listen to this shit like, oh, yo, my homie down the street is fucking ill. And this is what it feels like to me. I would also recommend this to fans of YL and Starker. Yeah. That Low Caesar collab that they have, because it does.
They're on some of the other planets. I
believe. Yeah, I mean, they're kind of all within that ecosystem, but I love how Phiik and Lungs kind of just stand out indelibly. Like, they are very strange, and they hit you like, I've never heard that before. Shout out to them. What are your favorite songs on the album?
She Could
is...
She Could. I gotta pull up the titles. Death Weapon, and maybe Saudi Arabian Air Force Ones.
Okay. I love this joint right here, track number 2. When I Needed Someone. I like Don Quixote, but if I had to pick 3, I'd say probably When I Needed Someone, She Could, and Worse Off Than Drugs. But there's so many of these tracks that I really like. I do understand that it's a bit taxing on the mind, body, and spirit. Like it really is.
A little long as well for how dense it is. It's like 45 minutes long. It's a bit much. And I can see why, if you're someone who's like a very deep and kind of maybe emotional listener, this might just be a bit too much over 45 minutes, maybe 15-20 minutes, or up to the silence, the end of Saudi Arabian Air Force Ones, go have a drink, come back. But I don't really hold that against the record because it's not wasted air.
Word.
It doesn't feel overstuffed. It's a lot. There's a lot of music here.
Yeah. I would recommend this shit also to my graph writer homies. Straight up and down. I would recommend this to my graph writer homies, especially the ones that were like battling with drug addiction in the 2000s. You know what I mean? Like cats that fell into like meth and shit, but were up all night writing. I could see them clearly having some headphones on and just fucking blasting Freights or, you know what I mean, the fucking local bridges or whatever. So shout out to fucking Phiik Lungs, Lonesword. I am fucking with Another Planet 4.
Should we listen to the other 3? Let us know in the comments.
I think I'm gonna have to, but maybe I might have to wait until fall comes back around because this shit is.
Well, I don't know if these other parts are anything like this one because it's Phiik and then other collaborators, right?
Okay.
Lungs is not present.
Is that
on
right?
The other 3.
No, these are
different. I believe these are different collaborators on each one.
Okay, I thought that they were, because when I saw them on Top Shelf Premium, I thought that they were like a dynamic duo, like a EPMD, like a Mobb Deep.
They
like
maybe correct me if I'm wrong, comments, but I believe these are different collaborators on each one. I believe this is Phiik and 1990.
Wow, to me it sounded like they grew up
they
working
work
with
so
each
well
other.
together, right? Yeah. I mean, they probably are very close.
Yeah, these fools do the fusion dance. But yeah, fucking Secret House against album reviews.
She could.
Shout out to L Spade. We'll be back.
L Spade. It's like part 2. It's like YL's.